is, instead of just firing a bunch of lead downrange like a musket man would, I'm looking for very specific targets, which makes me a murderer in their eyes. It's not just a matter of bad luck if somebody gets hit. I am looking for a very specific target, and if I hit them, I really should. This should be accurate to a man-sized target in decent weather conditions, up to at least 300 yards.
Oh, wow.
3 football fields. This is quite an accurate weapon when it's used properly and if you've got good conditions. The problem is we shoot a round ball, so if there's high humidity or a breeze of any kind, since it doesn't have the conical shape, it doesn't travel nearly as well, but the spin does keep it more stable. But the problem is a couple of things. Number one, it takes a lot longer to load this than it does that, because I can't just drop the ball down the barrel. For it to be accurate, the ball has to grip the rifle. So I have a ball that's almost exactly the same size as the barrel, just a tad smaller, and the difference is made up by a cloth patch. So I put the patch here, the ball on top of it, and then when I ram it down, the patch grips the rifle. So when I fire it, it comes out like that. The patch just falls away, but the ball keeps on going with the spin. So it's a lot more accurate. But again, when you're loading it, you saw him, he just drops it down, pulls it out. I have to force it all the way down. So it takes 4 to 5 times longer to load this gun than it does his. I can hit what I shoot at from a much longer distance, but in a military situation, I would not be with these guys. I would be off to the side as a sniper. If I get caught, they're not going to have any sympathy for me. And if they get caught, the accoutrements of a rifleman consider the powder horn, the rifle pouch, and of course the rifle. If I'm caught with any one of these things, they know I'm a rifleman. My days are really numbered. Just considered unfair by the British. Another thing you notice when he loaded that, he uses a paper cartridge and everything is prepared, ready to go, which makes it a lot faster. As a rifleman, I load everything individually, and you notice the first thing that he did was prime the pan. The last thing that I do is prime the pan, although they fire the same way. Since I am leaning over the barrel, forcing that thing down, I do not want that thing primed while I'm over here pushing it down, and I think you probably know why. So there's no point in taking a chance like that. Like he doesn't have to worry about it like I do. So what I do is, to start off, I have a powder horn. This is an antler tip that's been hollowed out. It holds exactly the right amount of powder for this particular gun. Measure it out. Sometimes on television in the movies, you'll see them looking downrange and they're just dumping powder down the barrel. That's a good way to blow up your gun, because you don't know how much is going down in there. At the very worst, it might not fire. Or at the very least it might not fire, at the very worst it'll blow up and kill you. So you need to know exactly how much goes down so it shoots the way that you know it's supposed to shoot. And there's a lot of practice that goes in, so you figure out exactly the right load for you. If I get killed and Captain Carpenter takes my gun and starts to fire it as a rifle, he will probably use a different load than I do, because he'll feel differently about it. So I work with this quite a bit to get the load properly prepared for the way that I shoot it. Powder is poured all the way to the top of the measure. I seal up the horn immediately. I don't want any sparks or moisture to get in there. That is poured down the barrel. I go down to the stock. I have a patch box. This contains patches that are pre-greased. They're cut to the right size. It saves a little bit of time, so I have to pre-cut it while I'm loading. Take a patch out, close that up, put the patch on the barrel, reach in the pouch, pull out a ball about the size of a marble. Goes on top of the patch. Take the rammer and force the ball in the patch down. It's a very tight fit, and they're shooting at you while you're trying to do this. And then the last thing I do, take the powder horn and prime the pan. From here on, it fires the same way that a musket does. You've got a hard, sharp piece of flint in the lock, which is why it's called a flint lock. Squeeze the trigger, the flint is moved forward, it hits the steel, knocks the steel out of the way. The sparks fall down into the pan, which fires the powder that I just poured into the pan. There's a tiny hole drilled in the barrel. That fire goes through that hole. That sets off the main charge. So, fire in the hole!
Same thing if you might want to cover the ears.
Except when that happens, it's fire.
Obviously. There's part of that
Oh, but
25%.
here it goes together.
You've heard the saying,
No, I
flash
gotta
in
get
the
you.
pan?
There it was.
That's what a flash in the pan actually comes from. What that means is the powder flashed like it was supposed to, but there's something plugging the hole, so the fire did not go through the hole properly. My only saving grace is that the other side has exactly the same problem, pretty much the same percentage. Hopefully.
Would you like a
Yes.
Humidity's fine. There's too much humidity in the air. That's why I'm troubleshooting.
And make sure there's nothing clogging that hole. It's just like make sure when you buy
plug it in
something,
last time?
lock, stock, and barrel. Muskets. You gotta have the lock, you gotta have the stock, and you gotta have the barrel.
Yes, he's gonna actually shoot.
Did you not listen to what he was saying, Davis?
I did. He has to reload all of it. Now it's like, no, you gotta shoot it. You gotta shoot it together. Okay, now I am gonna click my ears. Last time he did. Fire! Whoa! That had to make noise.
Coming out of that little touch hole we were talking about, I would blow down the barrel until the smoke disappears. Now that means any sparks that may be lingering around in there have been extinguished. Now it's safe to reload. Musket doesn't have that problem because you don't have the rifling. It's easy for some ash to catch a spark and hold it in that groove of the rifling. So if I pour powder down on top of a spark, it goes right back up in my face.
That put off a much bigger flame with this musket. Is that a common difference, or it's just how it fired?
Just how it fired. It depends. Number one, depends on how much powder I put in the pan. He's got a lot more powder down the barrel than I do. He'll probably use 2.5 times the powder in the barrel that I do. He's got a 75 caliber gun with approximately a 70 caliber ball, and a lot of the powder when he fires it, because it's such a loose fit, the ball will, or the powder as it explodes, some of the explosion will actually go around the ball as it's coming out of the barrel.
Not as efficient.
With a rifle, with that patch, all of the explosive power is completely behind the ball.
Pushing it.
Yeah, nothing goes around the ball until it exits the barrel.
And a lot of times it depends upon the powder, because like quartermaster will take, and quartermaster for Continental Army or the British Army and such, they would actually test the powder to see how many grains of powder it would take of a certain batch to equal the last batch, because if you look at some of the reports, they might use 189 grains of powder with this batch of powder. Next batch, it might be up to 12, 215, or it might drop down to 160 in the 160s. It depends upon the powder, because the powder back then is not as refined as it is today. I mean, you take GoX, Elephants, those companies, I mean, it's a very exact process that they go through. So one batch is pretty much the same, got great quality control. This batch is going to be the same as this, but back then you got different grades of powder.
Much more of an art back then than it is today.
And another thing is black powder burns notoriously slow, comparatively speaking to like today. So one of the reasons that the barrel is as long as it is, number one, it gives you a better sight picture. But also, the longer the barrel, the more chance that powder has to burn as it's pushing the ball out. It's kind of interesting, because if you ever get a chance to shoot one of these things over snow, put a live round in there and fire it over snow, you'll be amazed how much unburned powder you'll see in front of the muzzle, even with the barrel this long. So there's kind of a trade-off. You want it as long as you can comfortably hold it, so that you burn as much powder as possible, but you don't want it so long that it becomes unwieldy and you can't control it. And Daniel Boone is on record as having said he liked his gun to be long enough with the butt on the ground for the barrel to just touch his chin. And this is a 42-inch barrel. The stock is cut so that it fits me, my shoulder. They measured the distance from my shoulder to the crook of my finger. So when it fits in here, the trigger is in exactly the right place. They measured the distance from my cheekbone to my shoulder, so the drop fits exactly right. So a rifle is custom made to the guy who carries it.
And if he loses his mold,
See, if I just hurt you, you're about to
They
shoot
say
me
it's
or
like
stab me.
45 caliber.
You
Back
are
then,
not
45
hearing
caliber
him.
might mean 40.
Stop it.
Listening.
It might mean 46 and a half. It could mean a lot of
38.
things. So as the rifle, as the gunsmith would make the gun, as he drilled the barrel, he would make a mold for the ball that fit this particular gun. And then after a while, the steel was not as good quality, of course, as it is today. So after several years of shooting, over time, that steel is going to start to wear down, and the rifling becomes less deep. So it's not nearly as effective. So you take it back to the gunsmith, he re-drills it, so there's new rifling, gives you a brand new mold to now fit what might be a 53 caliber.
Gotcha. It's like pouring out an engine.
Yes.
Yep,
Very much so. Sure.
Go ahead.
Fine.
We each have one round. Shall we do a?
What you got? One round? We'll do a volley round.
Volley speed load.
Bye, round.
Huh?